Every day, before you step into the world, you owe yourself a few words of truth, a personal conversation that becomes the foundation of your character, your actions, and your results. Because the world doesn't shape you, your thoughts do. And the first thoughts of the day, they better be powerful. Self-talk is the foundation of daily mindset. It is the internal dialogue that shapes how you see yourself, how you interpret the world, and how you respond to everything that comes your way. It may seem simple, even trivial, to consider the words you speak to yourself each day, but those words are powerful. They are the script you read from before you take any action, make any decision, or respond to any challenge. And the quality of that script determines the quality of your life. What you repeatedly say to yourself becomes what you eventually believe. Your brain listens. If every morning you say, "I'm not good enough," "I'm stuck," or "I always mess up," then your mind will build a reality that proves you right. You'll hesitate to act, avoid new opportunities, and reinforce that story over and over again. On the other hand, if you tell yourself, "I am growing," "I am capable," or "I can figure it out," your brain responds in kind. It starts seeking possibilities instead of limitations. You begin to approach life with curiosity instead of fear, confidence instead of hesitation. This internal conversation happens so frequently that most people don't even realize it's there. It's like background noise, consistent, quiet, and persistent. But over time, that background noise becomes the music of your life. And whether that music is energizing or discouraging depends on whether your self-talk is empowering or destructive. Mindset is not something you're born with. It's something you train. And the gym where that training happens is your mind with self-talk as the daily workout. Every situation you face is filtered through the lens of your self-talk. If you're faced with a challenge and your inner voice says, "I can handle this," your stress level drops, your focus increases, and you find a solution. But if that same challenge is met with, "I always screw things up," then you shut down, avoid the issue, or act from fear. Nothing outside of you changed, only your internal language. That's how powerful self-talk is. It either builds momentum or drains it. It either strengthens your belief or weakens it. The most successful people in any field are not those who avoid problems. They are the ones who master their inner dialogue in the face of those problems. They speak to themselves with intention, clarity, and strength. They repeat powerful truths until those truths become the foundation of their confidence. And they do it every day, not just when things are easy. You don't need perfect circumstances to live a powerful life. You need a powerful mindset, and that mindset is built brick by brick, word by word, thought by thought. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can always control what you say to yourself about it. That choice, made daily, is what separates regret from resilience, stagnation from progress, and ordinary lives from extraordinary ones. It all starts with what you whisper to yourself when no one else is listening. Personal responsibility empowers change. It is the quiet but powerful force behind every lasting transformation in life. The moment you stop blaming circumstances, people, or your past, and start owning your choices, you unlock a level of freedom and influence that few ever reach. Responsibility is not about guilt or shame. It's about power. It's about understanding that while you may not control everything that happens, you are always in control of how you respond, how you grow from it, and what you decide to do next. Most people wait for something external to change before they change themselves. They wait for a better job, a more supportive partner, a lucky break, or a perfect opportunity. But those who succeed and evolve are the ones who stop waiting and start acting. They realize that no one is coming to save them, and that realization doesn't make them bitter. It makes them strong. They stop saying, "Why is this happening to me?" and instead ask, "What can I do about it?" That shift in language, that shift in ownership, is where change begins. When you take full responsibility for your life, you stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as a creator. You begin to recognize the role you've played in your outcomes, both good and bad. That awareness might sting at first, but it's the only place from which real growth can happen. Because if you caused it, or contributed to it, you can change it. You're not at the mercy of chance or other people's actions. You're at the helm, and that control is incredibly empowering. Taking responsibility also brings clarity. It forces you to confront the habits, thoughts, and behaviors that have held you back. It shines a light on your excuses and replaces them with choices. When you say, "I'm responsible," you eliminate the illusion that someone else is in charge of your destiny. That kind of accountability doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger, more intentional, and more focused. It demands honesty, but it rewards you with growth. The truth is, nothing changes until you change. Not your finances, not your health, not your relationships, not your confidence. All progress begins when you stop outsourcing your power and start owning your part. And once you do, even your setbacks become stepping stones, because you no longer see obstacles as permanent barriers. You see them as problems to solve, lessons to learn, or paths to redirect. That mindset gives you resilience. It gives you the ability to keep going, not because everything is perfect, but because you know you are capable of creating better. Personal responsibility is not a burden, it's a gift. It hands you the pen and says, "Write your story." It puts your future back in your hands and challenges you to rise to the occasion. It doesn't guarantee immediate results, but it guarantees that whatever happens next, it will be the result of your deliberate effort, your conscious choice, and your personal growth. And that is where real change lives. Growth is a daily decision. It's not something that just happens with time or age, it happens through intentional choices made one day at a time. Every morning when you wake up, you are presented with a simple but powerful question. Will I stretch today or stay the same? That decision is often quiet. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. But over time, the accumulation of those small daily decisions to grow is what shapes your character, your capabilities, and your future. The truth is, growth is rarely convenient. It often means choosing discomfort over ease, discipline over distraction, and progress over perfection. It means reading when you'd rather scroll, listening when you'd rather talk, and acting when you'd rather wait. Growth doesn't shout, it whispers. It shows up as that extra rep in the gym, that difficult conversation you're avoiding, or that new skill you keep putting off learning. It's in your daily habits, not your occasional breakthroughs. People often wait for a sign or for the right moment to change, improve, or evolve. But the right moment doesn't come to you. You create it through consistent action. Growth happens when you decide to show up differently, think differently, and do things you've never done before. It begins when you stop settling and start seeking better thoughts, better habits, better effort. Not for the sake of perfection, but for the pursuit of potential. Making the decision to grow daily means understanding that who you are today is not the final version of you. There is more in you, more to learn, more to give, more to become. But accessing that potential requires the courage to admit that you don't know it all, and the humility to become a student of life. It requires you to look at your patterns and ask yourself, is this helping me grow or keeping me stuck? That level of honesty can be uncomfortable, but it is the birthplace of transformation. One of the most important things to remember is that growth doesn't always look like a big leap forward. Sometimes it's simply not quitting. Sometimes it's choosing to be kind when it's easier to criticize, or staying focused for 30 more minutes when your mind wants to wander. These small, unseen choices are where growth truly lives. Because it's not what you do once in a while that matters. It's what you do daily that shapes who you become. When you choose growth every day, even in the smallest ways, you start to feel more aligned with your purpose. You begin to trust yourself more. Your confidence grows, not because everything is easy, but because you know you're committed to becoming better than you were yesterday. And that commitment, repeated daily, is what separates those who merely wish for change from those who create it. Growth doesn't come from luck. It comes from decision, and that decision is yours to make every single day. Discipline starts with intention. Before any action becomes consistent, before any habit becomes automatic, there is a decision, an internal choice that says, "This matters enough for me to commit to it." Discipline is not about being perfect or never slipping up. It's about choosing, day after day, to align your behavior with your goals, even when it's difficult. That choice begins with intention. Without a clear reason, without a strong why, discipline quickly fades. But when your actions are rooted in purpose, discipline becomes a tool, not a punishment. Every disciplined person you admire didn't magically wake up one day with unbreakable willpower. What they did was get clear on what they wanted and why it mattered. That clarity became the compass that guided their choices. Intention gives meaning to repetition. It's what turns waking up early from a chore into a step toward excellence. It's what transforms focused work from something boring into something fulfilling. When your actions are tied to intention, they gain emotional weight, and that emotional weight is what helps you carry them out when motivation is gone. Discipline isn't just about doing hard things. It's about doing the right things for the right reasons. Many people try to force discipline by copying routines or adopting habits they saw someone else do. But if those habits aren't tied to their own values or goals, they don't last. Intention personalizes discipline. It makes your efforts meaningful to you, not just admirable to others. It anchors your behavior in purpose, so that even when progress is slow, the process still feels worth it. The beauty of starting with intention is that it brings self-awareness into the equation. You begin to ask yourself important questions. What do I really want? Who do I want to become? What am I willing to sacrifice to get there? Those questions may not have easy answers, but just asking them puts you ahead of most people. Because when you understand your intentions, you no longer rely on willpower alone. You build structure, habits, and systems around your purpose. Once discipline is rooted in intention, consistency becomes easier. You're no longer negotiating with yourself every day because your choices have already been made. You know why you're saying no to distraction. You know why you're pushing through discomfort. And when you forget, because we all do, you have something deeper than motivation to return to. You have intention. That inner decision becomes a silent promise you made to yourself, and keeping that promise becomes a source of pride. Real discipline is not rigid or joyless. It's focused and freeing. It creates structure, and that structure creates space for growth. But none of it happens automatically. It all begins with that moment of clarity, that moment where you say, "This is who I want to be," and then begin to act in alignment with that decision. Every habit, every routine, every effort, it all starts with intention. Failure is feedback, not defeat. It's easy to misunderstand failure as the end of the road, a sign that you're not good enough or that you're wasting your time. But in reality, failure is one of the most valuable tools in your growth journey. It carries lessons that success often hides. Every time you fall short, you're handed a mirror, not to shame you, but to show you where to improve, where to refine, and where to grow stronger. The only real defeat is choosing not to learn from it. People often fear failure because they tie their self-worth to outcomes. When something doesn't work out, they don't just see it as a failed attempt. They see themselves as a failure. That mindset creates paralysis. It keeps people stuck, unwilling to try again or take new risks. But when you detach your identity from the result and see failure as neutral information, everything changes. Suddenly, failure becomes useful, it becomes data, it tells you what didn't work, why it didn't work, and what might work better next time. The most successful people in the world, entrepreneurs, athletes, creators, and leaders, don't avoid failure. They study it. They embrace it as a natural and necessary part of the process. They understand that every setback brings them closer to their breakthrough. The road to excellence is paved with missteps, and every one of them contains a seed of wisdom. If you're not failing at something, you're probably not stretching yourself enough. Playing it safe might protect your ego, but it rarely leads to growth. When you shift your perspective and treat failure as feedback, you begin to approach challenges differently. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this?" That shift transforms frustration into curiosity. It keeps you engaged instead of defeated. It allows you to remain emotionally steady, knowing that each experience, whether it leads to success or failure, is moving you forward, refining you, preparing you for the next level. Failure also builds resilience. Each time you get back up after falling, you become mentally tougher. You prove to yourself that setbacks are survivable, and not only that, they're valuable. With every failure you face and learn from, your confidence grows. Not the fake kind of confidence that comes from winning all the time, but the deep, lasting confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes your way. That kind of strength doesn't come from comfort. It comes from overcoming. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's a part of it. The path to mastery in anything will be lined with mistakes, misjudgments, and moments of doubt. But none of those have the power to stop you unless you let them. If you keep moving forward, keep adjusting, and keep learning, failure becomes one of your greatest allies. It stops being something to fear and starts being something to respect. Because every time it shows up, it's giving you something no win ever could: the chance to get better. Progress over perfection fuels long-term success. One of the greatest traps that prevents people from achieving their goals is the illusion that everything must be perfect before they start, or that every step they take must be flawless. Perfection creates pressure. It convinces you that anything less than ideal is a failure. But the truth is, success isn't built in perfect moments. It's built in consistent, imperfect effort. Progress is what compounds over time. It's what moves the needle. And choosing progress over perfection is what separates those who get started from those who stay stuck. Waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, or the perfect skill set leads to endless delays. It's a comfortable excuse disguised as a noble standard, but nothing grows in hesitation. Growth begins when you take action. Messy, uncomfortable, uncertain action. You don't need to have everything figured out to move forward. You just need to be willing to begin with what you have, learn along the way, and get better as you go. That's how real momentum is built. Perfection is a myth, an unreachable standard that keeps you trapped in fear. It makes you obsessed with outcomes instead of learning. It forces you to focus on how things look instead of how much you're improving. And when perfection is your standard, you'll always find a reason to quit. Because progress doesn't always look impressive. Some days it looks like showing up tired. Other days it looks like getting 1% better, even when you wanted to be 100% there. But it's those small wins, those steady gains, that lead to real, lasting results. Choosing progress over perfection also helps build a healthier relationship with failure. When your goal is perfection, any mistake feels like a disaster. But when your goal is progress, failure becomes part of the plan. It becomes a teacher instead of a threat. You start to measure success not by how perfectly you executed something, but by whether you improved, stretched yourself, and moved forward from where you were yesterday. That mindset is what allows people to sustain effort, to bounce back from setbacks, and to stay committed for the long haul. Long-term success is not a straight line. It's a winding path filled with adjustments, corrections, and second tries. Perfection demands that everything go right the first time, which is completely unrealistic, but progress embraces the process. It understands that mastery is not achieved overnight, and that greatness is built through repetition. Every expert was once a beginner who made the decision to keep going, despite the imperfections. The people who go the furthest are not the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who never stop making progress. They show up consistently, stay focused on the next step, and allow time to do its work. Success isn't about being flawless, it's about being committed. And when you make progress the goal instead of perfection, you free yourself from the pressure of being perfect and unlock the power of becoming better. Step by step, you build a life not defined by unattainable standards, but by meaningful, sustainable growth.